one of my favorite albums of all time, Jar of Flies. And it's not actually a full-length album, obviously. It's an EP. But I've told this story before. When it came out in January of 1994, I believe. I climbed out my window because the local record store had like a midnight sale for this record. So I like snuck out my basement window and went and bought this album like at midnight, the night that it came out. I was so pumped about it. And there was a record store in my neighborhood called Crandall Audio. And the guy was just like, he was such a cool dude. Cause that was in the day of when, like the local record store guy was the shit. And he was almost like a tastemaker with the posters and the shit that he would kind of feature in his store. And so, he had, of course, like weeks before this came out, had plastered the walls and stuff. Every time you'd drive by it, you'd see Alice in Chains, Jar of Flies, midnight sale on January, whatever, Remember, this was like at their peak, like after Dirt had hit and they had been touring relentlessly behind it. And so, I climbed out my window. My mom didn't even know I was gone. I came right back, climbed right back in the window, put that CD in the tray and listened. So what I wanted to do is talk a little bit about the, kind of history behind this album. According to the book, Alice in Chains, The Untold Story by David DeSola, bassist Mike Starr was fired from the band during the 1993 Dirt tour for his drug use. Starr went on to struggle with addiction until his eventual death in Salt Lake City, Utah in 2011. If you read Mike Starr's Wikipedia, he struggled. His dad was a heroin addict too. Like there's stories about him and his dad getting arrested together. In a February 1994 Rolling Stone article, Lane Staley was quoted saying that Starr's departure from Alice in Chains stemmed from just a difference in priorities. We wanted to continue intense touring and press. Mike was ready to go home. Mike Starr himself later contradicted this account when he appeared on the reality show Dr. Drew's Celebrity Rehab, claiming that he was in fact kicked out of the band due to his escalating drug use. In a rare instance of reverse roles, it was usually Ozzy Osbourne who was poaching band members from other bands. Yeah. Alice in Chains poached Ozzy's bass player, Mike Inez, who still plays with them to this day.
Yeah.
As Starr's replacement. Inez joined them on the 1993 Lollapalooza tour, which was a massive tour. Listen to the lineup of this tour, the main stage lineup. Alice in Chains, Tool, Rage Against the Machine, Primus, Dinosaur Jr., Fishbone, Arrested Development, Front 242, which is an industrial band that a lot of people probably know, and Babes in Toyland. And Alice in Chains was the kind of the headliner because as they had just released Dirt. So the tour ended in the fall of 93 and the band members found they had been evicted from their residence. The recounting of the situation went something like Lane thought Jerry was going to pay the rent. Jerry thought Sean would pay. Sean thought Mike would pay, and now they're homeless. So the band, as a result of this, ended up moving into London Bridge Studio in Seattle because during Lollapalooza, Jerry Cantrell had put in a call to producer Toby Wright. And Toby is the guy who went on to produce albums like Follow the Leader by Korn and Home by Seven Dust. And he had a proposal to collaborate on some new material with Toby, Jerry did. And so Wright was keen to that idea. And he had actually booked the time at London Bridge. So the band had nowhere else to go. And they moved into the studio. Despite Cantrell's assurances to Wright at the time that they had made this agreement, the band had not written any tracks before the sessions began. Drummer Sean Kinney was quoted as saying, "After playing loud music for a year, we'd come home. And the last thing we wanted to do was crank up the amps right away. That stuff was written on buses and whenever we had downtime." So he's talking about the songs on this album, on Jar of Flies. "We did Jar of Flies to see how it was to record with bassist Mike Inez. We just went into the studio with no songs written to check out the chemistry, and it all fell into place. The sounds, the tones were really good. We thought it would be a waste not to put that material out." Jar of Flies is the third studio EP by American rock band Alice in Chains. It was released on January 25th, 1994. The band's second acoustic EP after 1992's Sap. A lot of people forget about Sap. There's a song on there called, I think it's Right Turn with Chris Cornell on it. Yeah. It's got Chris Cornell and Mark Arm, the singer of Mudhoney.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the whole album is acoustic.
Yeah, it is. And there's a song on there called Brother with Ann Wilson from Heart. The song with Chris Cornell, I just was listening to it the other day. It's called Right Turn. And at the end, Chris does these kind of like, it's almost like, what do they call it? Like counterpoint type vocals, like back and forth, you know, like harmonies.
Call and response.
Yeah, call and response is a good way to put it. So Jar of Flies was actually Alice in Chains' second acoustic EP. The self-produced record was written and recorded over the course of just 1 week at London Bridge Studio in Seattle. The tracks No Excuses and I Stay Away and Don't Follow were released as singles to promote the EP. Jar of Flies was nominated for 2 Grammys in 1995, Best Recording Package and Best Hard Rock Performance for I Stay Away. So anyway, the EP was well received by critics and had been certified quadruple platinum by the Recording Industry of America, making Jar of Flies one of the band's most successful releases. The opening song on this is Rotten Apple, and that bass riff at the beginning, all that dun 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 dun. That's Mike Inez, you know, jumping feet first or head first into Alice in Chains. So the first session took place on September 7th of 1993, according to accounts in the book Alice in Chains in the Studio by Jake Brown. So Lane Staley says in the interview, we just wanted to go in the studio for a few days with our acoustic guitars and just see what happened. We never really planned on the music we made at that time to be released, but the record label heard it and they really liked it. For us, it was just the experience of 4 guys getting together in the studio and making some music. The album sessions lasted 14 to 18 hours a day. The band, of course, lived in the studio. And recording was complete within 7 days. Assistant engineer Jonathan Plum described the sessions as exhaustive. It was recorded on tape on a Nev 8068 mixing console because Wright wanted the album's acoustic sound to be as natural as possible. Now listen to this. This was like a standout quote for me. Staley instructed that Pro Tools not be used within the studio.
Damn.
As Wright explained, Lane absolutely had a working knowledge of his sonic preferences in the studio and felt analog sounded better for the band's sound. So Staley wrote much of the album's lyrics within the studio and arranged the album's vocal harmonies. Wright recalled the pace of Staley's work as quick and that the vocal tracks were recorded within 1 or 2 takes via a Neumann M49 microphone. Jerry Cantrell also performed lead vocals on the track Don't Follow. Producer Toby Wright described Cantrell as an awesome singer and stressed that you couldn't have done all those harmonies without him. The album sessions concluded on September 14th of 1993, and Wright mixed the album at Scream Studios in Los Angeles, California from September 17th to 22nd. So it's wild that like they recorded that album and mixed it within like a month and released it in January, like a couple months later, the following year, after they put out singles, you know, leading up to it and everything. That's how fast they moved. I thought this was interesting. The album's title originates from a science experiment that Cantrell conducted in 3rd grade. The experiment consisted of maintaining 2 jars full of flies. The flies in one jar would be overfed, while the flies in the other jar would be underfed. The flies that were overfed reproduced rapidly, but then died from overcrowding. The flies that were underfed managed to survive through the year. Concerning the anecdote, Staley said, I guess there's a message in there somewhere. Evidently, that experiment had a big impact on Jerry. The EP Jar of Flies was released on January 25th, 1994 by Columbia Records. The album was promoted by 2 singles, No Excuses and I Stay Away, both of which received music videos. No Excuses reached number 1 on the album Rock Tracks chart, becoming the first single by the band to do so. Cantrell admitted that we couldn't believe it did so well and that the success of Jar of Flies showed us that we could do what we liked and other people would like it too. The album entered the Billboard 200 chart at number 1 with the first week sales of over 141,000 copies, becoming the first ever EP and first Alice in Chains release to top the charts. It was the only EP ever to gain this distinction until 2004 when Collision Course Mashup EP by Jay-Z and Linkin Park took that title. Jar of Flies sold 2 million copies during its first year, over 2 million copies, and was later certified triple platinum in 95 and quadruple platinum in 2022. The EP went on to receive massive mainstream critical acclaim. In 1995, the single I Stay Away was nominated for Best Hard Rock Performance, losing to Soundgarden's Black Hole Sun. In April 2019, the EP was ranked number 42 on Rolling Stone's 50 Greatest Grunge Albums list. Unfortunately, this high point was followed by a period that many consider to be the band's lowest. That summer, the day before Alice in Chains was to go on the road with Metallica, the band pulled out of the tour. Many reasons have been cited for this decision, but Cantrell insists the band was simply burned out from working too hard. We'd been going full force, just running at top speed with our eyes closed, he told Rolling Stone. We had all been way too close for too long, and we were suffocating. We were like 4 plants trying to grow in the same pot. I like that analogy. The band's next self-titled album, also produced by Toby Wright with the three-legged dog on the cover, only helped confirm the notion that Staley was falling away from the band and they were falling apart. So I wanted to show you guys before we move on, basically this press clipping that came out at the time from the LA Times, because I thought this was funny in doing my research for this. And so this is January 23rd, 94, from the LA Times. Perhaps Alice in Chains exercised a few too many demons on its dark and cathartic Dirt album in 92 because the new Jar of Flies EP lacks the visceral intensity and memorable songs that marked the Seattle Hard Rock Quintet's 4 previous releases. While the band has certainly earned the right to explore other aspects of its musical personality, and it does, even dabbling in jazz swing and incorporating strings on this partly acoustic, partly electric effort, the result is ultimately more atmosphere than substance. The overall feel of the 7-song collection is heady, warm, and ethereal, but with few exceptions, the songs are too linear and static to be compelling. I Stay Away features some of Alice's trademark dark and heavy crunch and Lane Staley's passionate, if strangely mannered vocals, and the poignant ballad Don't Follow, featuring a plaintive harmonica and Jerry Cantrell's distinctive dirge-like guitar wail, is beautiful and even Beatlesque in its gentle melody. But that's about it for bright spots among 30 otherwise monotonous, meandering minutes. So I just thought that was great. The LA Times
reviewer, no Rotten Apple, no.
She did not like that one.
Like deep cuts on there that are really good too.
Rotten Apple is like one of my favorite Alice in Chains songs, without a doubt.
Hey, na.
I'd like to know what Anthony Fantano thinks of this album.